They say I live in the past. I can make the future.
Okay, we're into the second hour of the show this evening, and delighted to have another guest join us for the section called They Say I Live in the Past. A lot of good music coming out of Ireland for years, but in the last 5-10 years as well, some great music. We've got a band called Sprints. We've got Sam on bass, Colm on guitar, and Jack on drums. And I'm delighted that I'm joined tonight by Carla, lead singer and songwriter. Now, Sprints were formed in late 2019, described as being raw and raucous. Sprints are a garage noise 4-piece. The lyrics of the tracks seem to be always written about some sort of real event, real story as well. I know they've been described as being amazing as a live band, and NME earlier in this year put them in the top 100 for 2021. The Irish Times got it slightly better, going top 50 to watch. Good evening, Carla.
Hey, Dermot, how are you?
I'm very good. Thanks for doing this. Was it difficult to narrow down to 8 tracks?
Yeah, I think these things are always impossible. They're always like one of my favorite things to do, but at the same time, so hard. I think like in terms of music, obviously you've been influenced by so much that it's difficult to kind of narrow it down, but got there in the end.
Definitely. Right. So we'll kind of get into it pretty quickly, and then we'll do a bit of chatting as we go along. The first one, you've gone for the Supremes, Keep Me Hanging On. Is this something you remember from an early age, or is it something that you've revisited over the years?
I think the Supremes kind of represent the very early stages of my life, and when I kind of first discovered how like powerful music was and how much I loved it. My mom would put Motown on every day on the way to school, and was a big fan of like the classics, the Supremes being one of her favorites. So this song just really reminds me of like a real, like, obviously going to school wasn't the most joyful time, but always listening to music in the car was really nice. And I think it was my first introduction to how like soulful and like passionate music can be, and I just think Motown can't be touched in terms of emotion in singing. So yeah, always loved it.
Right, that was You Keep Me Hanging On. Now, that track, Carla, has been covered by a number of people over the years. When you were starting out in bands and music, is it a track you ever covered
It
yourself?
wasn't actually like we've never actually covered any Motown or soul. It's the song I cover the most when I'm cooking in the kitchen, or it's what I put on anytime I'm at home, or when I have people over for drinks and stuff like that. Um, so we've never covered it. I think it's always been one of our ideas to cover some of the classic Motown Christmas songs. If we ever get to do a Christmas time gig, I think that'll be the time someone will see a Motown cover from us.
Brilliant. And when did you start getting into music yourself, like in terms of playing it or performing?
The most vivid memory I have of it, I think I was about like 13, 14. I know that from very early age, I have pictures of me with like plastic drum kits and plastic guitars at about the age of 3 or 4. But I remember very vividly, my dad put it on the Appetite for Destruction live album, I think when I was like 13, 14, and I was listening to Slash play for the first time, and I was like, God, I really want, like, I want to play guitar, like, I have to get one. And I begged and I begged and I begged, and my mom did that classic thing where she wouldn't let me get an electric guitar until I learned some classical guitar. So I had to get a nylon string and do like a year lessons to try and even attempt music theory. Just didn't have the patience for it. I just wanted to play. I just wanted to do it for myself. So I think I was about 13, probably 14 actually, when I got my first electric guitar. I kind of messed around, did a couple of years of lessons. And to be honest, I kind of gave it up then after school. I always thought I wanted to be a writer, and it wasn't until my early 20s I discovered a passion for songwriting and that I could kind of blend the two worlds of music and writing together. So I think a bit of a late bloomer in that sense, but it's always been a major, major part of my life.
And definitely making up for lost time in the meteoric rise of sprints in the last year or so as well. That's brilliant. Your second track, Bauhaus, Dark Entries.
Yeah, so this is kind of like a real flash forward in time compared to the Supremes. Bauhaus, I again very late to the party, only discovered them maybe like a year and a half ago. But I remember hearing Dark Entries, which isn't actually the opening track of their debut album. I think it was re-released as the opening track online. But I just heard the drums at the start of that, and immediately it clicked, and I was like, God, this is incredible! Like this is what I want us to sound like. And Jack Callum, the drummer of Sprints, is a massive Bauhaus fan. So we've been sending it around trying to get all the boys into it. But I think this is a real flash forward of like kind of how your music discovery never ends. Like the Supremes was my first discovery of music, and Bauhaus are one of my latest. And you're always kind of trying to find something else, and there's always something out there for you to discover. So I think Bauhaus is very representative of that, and it's an incredible piece of music.
He's soliciting on his town-bound foes, the raiding through some lonesome devil's road. And watching well beating up a glass grave, no walking body check with the same host. To the opposite services, exploitation of his body is work. For the visible one fire breaks up his nerves, and he lays suffices his eye.
Indie Rocks Radio. New artists and classic hits 24 hours a day.
Right, great track, Dark Entries from Bauhaus, choice of my guest Carla from Sprints. Carla, the opening of that track is really interesting. It's got feedback, percussion, a real kind of wall of noise, which is something that it seems to be reminiscent of Sprint's singles so far. Is that something that you've worked on before you've gone in to get it produced, or is that something that you've been influenced by in terms of the production as well? I know you've worked with Daniel from Girl Band.
So I think it's kind of a mix of both, that we're definitely very heavily influenced by post-punk and a lot of that noise rock and prog rock even. So there are a lot of bits where we go in with the ideas of we want to use feedback is often used to represent whatever the emotion of the song is, and the drums and the spaciousness. A lot of our music tends to be around things like anxiety or like relationships, and you really want to kind of elevate or exacerbate the feeling of like loneliness or tightness. So we try and use the sounds and the feedback for that. But a lot of the times we went into recording the first EP with Dan, and there were moments where he pulled out this like incredibly weird machine called like a copycat, I think, and it's like an oscillator, where we were able to just like really take our feedback sound and we were able to extend it and like change the pitch of it. And we were doing that live like in the studio. So Colin would be standing there playing the guitar and we'd be flipping these switches and hoping something great came out of it. But he really helped us think in terms of textures and layers a little bit more. So it's definitely a bit of both. I think we're very set in a lot of our ways in our music, but then at the same time really open to experimentation and whatever creativity happens in the studio.
Which kind of brings us really nicely on to the next artist you've chosen here, PJ Harvey. That's something that's kind of marked her career throughout. I was talking a few weeks ago to James Johnston, who's on the show, who's worked with PJ on a few things and toured with her, but she's experimented a lot as well. I know you've chosen Down by the Water, but is she quite influential for you?
Absolutely. I think particularly for myself and Colin, like we're very influenced by that kind of early 90s, late 80s rock scene. Jack and Sam actually the same. They'd be probably more Sonic Youth heads, and myself and Colin PJ Harvey heads. I just think this album is just incredible. And really recently Colin has a car and I bought him the CD version of it. I bought myself the vinyl and we were just listening to it over and over again. And you sometimes forget, but I think this album, I don't know, Mercury nominated, but Mercury winning, definitely deserving. But I just think her experimentation vocally, like there's a lot of similarities with her and Patti Smith, obviously. But I just love the guitars and the cleanness of everything. It feels very clean, but at the same time, yeah, there's a little bit of that like anxiety inducing layers underneath some of her stuff, which I think we definitely are definitely trying to emulate now a little bit more.
And lyrically as well, her stuff is always interesting and always kind of fixed in something real. That's a feature of what you're doing at the moment as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that I've always gravitated towards writers who are fixated in kind of reality. I mean, I love all types of writing and surrealism and taking creative license, but I think, yeah, everything feels very rooted, and you can very much picture the moment in time, or the moment the song is written about, and I think that can be the most powerful.
I lost my heart under the bridge to that little girl, so much to me, and now I'm old, and now I holler, she'll never know just what I found. That blue-eyed swimming in the water. Come back here, man, give me my daughter. Little fish, big fish, swimming in the water. Come
That was PJ Harvey, Down by the Water, third track chosen by Carla from Sprints, who's joined us this evening on They Say I Live in the Past. Carla, we move on a bit now. We move to 2004, 2005, American rock band LCD Sound System. Is this something that you've come to more recently or something that you would have been listening to back then?
I think it's something we've come to. It's something we always go back to. We would have been fans, yeah, from the debut album, and the second album, particularly Sound of Silver. But this is kind of, I think, LCD Sound System. If you had to pick one band that each of us kind of loved, or was like a band that we all would definitely go to see all the time live, it would be LCD Sound System. We're all massively influenced in them, and I think there's lots of nice memories we have of them as a band, whether it's going to see them live at festivals, or one of the first times I met Jack was I think LCD Sound System was playing or something, or they always talked about how they loved it. I think it's that band where if you're at a party and you want to seem kind of like cool, music, or you're not sure what to put on, you can just put on an LCD Sound System album and it's guaranteed to go down well.
So they've been kind of in the background as the band have been evolving then as well.
Yeah, I think there's a nice nostalgia, and there's a lot of nice memories with LCD Sound System, and also they're just a great band. I think particularly on this album, I obviously was aware of all their hits, but I think when I started to actually go and listen to their albums from start to finish, and Movement on this album is just like, it really struck a chord with me, pardon the pun. But I just think the energy in it, they're such great performers, the live shows they put up, like everything. We're all just big, massive James Murphy fans.
Yeah, this next question is a difficult one. It's linked into that though, because people can be really honest when I ask this question, or they can go, I don't want to say. But what was your first live gig that you went to?
Oh, mine was something really embarrassing, like Westlife. Like, I'm not like, obviously, okay. I was like 8. Yeah, I was like 8 years old. So the first gig I ever went to was Westlife, and I went to Westlife probably about 4 times. I was a big fan. And then I think my first like actual gig that I like bought my own ticket to and was like a rock show was Foo Fighters.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, that saves you straight away. That's brilliant. Okay, let's go with Movement, LCD Sound System.
From the small place to a bigger city. Oh, it's a bigger bag to strap the ego of a little baby. It's like a discipline without the discipline of all of the discipline. It's like a culture without the effort of all of the culture. Oh, but I'm tapped to. You're pillaging and I'm tapped to. You're yesterday and I'm tapped to. Another reason I'm tapped to. It's like a discipline without the discipline of all of the discipline. It's like a fat guy in a t-shirt doing all the saying. It's like a couple dads and a few friends trying hard to stay in. With history and I'm tapped. You're passing easy, I'm tapped. You're pillaging and I'm tapped. From best results, well I'm tapped. Here comes a repo, look at the repo, sitting on the same. It's in the blood bag, it's on his pyramid, running pulled up labor. Laying the back out in a t-shirt, doing all the singing. Continue drum tag, another which one did it on the brain. The history that I'm tapped. It's hard to see what I'm tapped. The pillaging that I'm tapped. The passions up to I'm tapped. It's all we've got to without the effort. I'm all over the luggage. It's like a discipline, I'm all the discipline, I'm all of the discipline. It's like a movement, without the Bible, I'm all of the meaning. It's like a culture, without the culture, I'm all of the culture. Without history, I'm tapped. Your classes, I'm tapped. Your pillaging, I'm tapped. Your pillaging, I'm tapped.
Okay, I'm chatting to Carla from Sprints tonight on They Say I Live in the Past. Carla, we talked a bit just before that track about live gigs, and you're looking stupid. I'm going to say it anyway. You're definitely looking forward to the October gigs. Hopefully everything goes as it should, but you've got a nice lineup of gigs as well. UK and Ireland tour.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like we're going a little bit from famine to feast because we haven't. Our last gig was 28th February last year, so we're all a little bit like, oh God, like it's really going from. We're not sure if what the restrictions will be like in Ireland and if we'll be playing gigs before tour. I mean, we'd love to get one practice one in, but I mean, yeah, we're buzzing. I think it's mad to think that so many people who have found us or all our releases this year that no one has actually seen us or experienced us live. So on the 31st of March, we have a little something special planned. We're gonna be doing our own kind of online live EP launch, featuring some special guests and a live performance by ourselves, obviously, and sponsored by a lovely little company, Dead Rabbit Whiskey. But yeah, that'll be kind of people's first chance to be able to get us in somewhat of a live experience. But then, yeah, really looking forward to October and November.
That's brilliant, because with the magic of time travel, that means it's 2 days from now, Carla. Today's the 29th, so in 2 days we're going to get to see that. We have experienced some live performances though, using the online gigs and stuff like that. How have you found those without an audience in front of you?
I think it's very strange. Yeah, it is weird. The first few we did were definitely tougher, I think, because often you're playing to a room full of like cameramen and sound men, and when you finish a song, there's just this kind of silent like one clap from the back of the room, so it's a bit surreal. But yeah, we recently filmed one for the BBC for Gwyl, their online live festival, which was a really, really great experience. We were able to kind of do something a little more theatrical and take a lot more time to plan it, and the guys we worked with on it were really, really talented. So it's been great. Obviously, it's been nice to be able to play at all, so we're very fortunate.
Next track you've chosen is Fake Tales of San Francisco from Arctic Monkeys. I've interviewed a few people now from different bands, older bands and newer bands, and Arctic Monkeys crops up quite a bit. Very influential of, I suppose, the indie sound anyway. Seem to be particularly influential of Irish bands as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think Arctic Monkeys is one of the first bands. I think they were at that kind of big explosion of like what was the early 2000s like indie scene. It was like the first Arctic Monkeys album came out, Hot Fuss came out by the Killers. I think the Kooks had just put one out. I think there was just, and the Strokes had just kind of come back into that whole like New York scene was really exploding in the early 2000s. I think it was that time where I'd just gotten my first guitar, and then there was this explosion of guitar music. I think it was kind of the perfect storm. So I think they're a brilliant band in general. That album is probably one of my favorite albums of all time. I think it's perfect from start to finish. And not even as just a snapshot in time, I think it really stands up today. But particularly thinking how young they were, I think it really just captured like a time and a place in their lives so well. That yeah, it's always stuck with me. I think just the guitar work, the lyrics, the energy, the kind of cheekiness to it, I think always stuck with me as well. I've always wanted to try and keep a little bit of that with me as well in our writing.
Absolutely. And I think at the time as well, people were kind of slightly taken aback by the fact that this band were doing exactly what they wanted to do, sounding like they wanted to sound. And then people kind of got on board with it. They weren't trying to follow any sort of trend at that point, were they?
Yeah, I think like you forget that at that time, because they're so massive now, that like it's the classic thing. Like they were kind of like an indie band to like back when they first came out, but now they're absolutely huge. Like their monthly listeners are up in the dozens of millions. But you forget at that time that most of the rock music that was around was either people still in that Nirvana kind of teen stage, or there's like very heavy rock music, and even at that it wasn't breaking through to like mainstream radio and stuff. So they were part of this real like indie movement, and change. Like indie obviously used to mean independent, and now means that kind of guitar driven music. But yeah, I just think it was a brilliant album, and I've just always loved it.
There's a super cool band, yeah, with a trilbies and the glasses of white wine.
know, kick me out, kick me out. I don't want to hear you, kick me out, kick me out. I don't want to hear you, I don't want to hear you. Fake tales of San Francisco echo through the air. And there's a few bored faces at a black hole wishing they weren't there. And as the microphone squeaks, the young girl's telephone beeps. Yeah, she's dashing for the exit. Oh, she's running to the streets outside. Oh, you saved me, she screams down the line. The band were fucking wank and I'm not having a nice time. I don't want to hear you. Kick me out, kick me out. I don't want to hear you, no. Kick me out, kick me out. But Bird said it's amazing though, so all that's left is the proof that love's not only blind but deaf. He talks to San Francisco, he's from a hunter's bar. I don't quite know the distance, but I'm sure that's far. Yeah, I'm sure it's pretty far. And yeah, I'd love to tell you all my problem. You're not from New York City, I'm from Rockland. So get off the bandwagon and put down the apple. Yeah, 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 yeah. Get off the bandwagon, put down the apple. Get off the bandwagon, put down the apple. Get off the bandwagon, put down the apple. Get off the bandwagon, put down the apple.
Do you have an iPhone?
Hello.
You can now listen through Simple Radio. Find it via the App Store.
Arctic Monkeys, of course, Fake Tales of San Francisco. And still, you were saying it earlier, but it still sounds really, really fresh and lyrically brilliant as well. Great album. And another great album to come out towards the end of 2019 was Bitch Falcon's album. And you've chosen a track from that. You've chosen Damp Breath. Are this a band that you would gig with or you know, be in discussions with about what's happening in music and so on?
So not really. I think like one of the big misconceptions about the scene in Ireland is that like everybody knows each other. And I think like we all know of each other for sure, but particularly with the circumstances the last year and a half, like we haven't even played a gig since last February. So I think there is a real camaraderie around the scene, but there has been no gigging scene for like the last 2 years nearly. So it's hard, but I think there's always been a great wealth of music. I think it's amazing that there's now a spotlight on Irish music. And at the same time, I think people can kind of lump you in together as acts because you are all Irish fans, when actually that's probably one of the few things you have in common. But I think Bitch Falcon, I think sonically we are probably similar enough. But they've always been around and they've always been kind of like an industry darling in Ireland. I think their album was so anticipated, like people have been waiting for it for years, that myself and Jack and Colm, we were playing in another band before Sprints, and we went to Electric Picnic and they were playing in the Other Voices stage, and they were so loud and like so energetic and so like passionate, and we turned to each other and we were like, why aren't we writing music like this? Like this is exactly the music we love and we listen to, and like we could feel the songs like in us, if that makes sense. Like, and it sounds very cheesy, but like I always wanted to write that kind of very aggressive, slightly tongue-in-cheek music, but you kind of get pulled off it. It's like, are you falling into the stereotype of like the angry woman with a guitar kind of situation? But eventually I just didn't care anymore. I just wrote more and more. So I think Bitch Falcon are very representative of that turning point for us. And maybe one day we'll get to gig with them or even meet them. But right now, yeah, just fans from afar.
And definitely. And just the band you were doing music with just before Sprints then, did you feel there was a pressure? You kind of hinted on it there, but a pressure to conform to something that might be a bit successful if you follow this route as opposed to what you really believe you should be doing.
Absolutely. I think like particularly I was the front woman of that band as well, but I think I've always fought against my identity or being pigeonholed or falling into too many stereotypes. I think, like, as a queer woman, it's people are like, oh, of course you're in a punk band, of course you play guitar, like, of course you write really angry, shady music, and those kind, like, or of course you like football or whatever those kind of things are. I think I spent a lot of my life really not wanting to be a stereotype, but finding that unfortunately I fit into a lot of the stereotypes. But I've realized that there's nothing to be ashamed of. That the reason those stereotypes exist is because you do have to turn to music, often to reflect or to express your emotions. And I kind of just stopped caring about stereotype. I'm just going to embrace it. Like, yeah, I love football. I like drinking Guinness and I like writing angry music, but I'll be rich and famous one day, so it'll be worth it.
I love it. I love it. Right. This is from the album Staring at Clocks, Bitch Falcon. That's Damp Breath, taken from Bitch Falcon's album Staring at Clocks. Another choice from Carla, who's joined me from Sprints tonight in this section called They Say I Live in the Past. And we were talking just a bit about stereotypes and so on just before that. And I was surprised you picked this next track, not because I wouldn't expect you to pick this next track, because a lot of people have been, saying, you've got to listen before you start judging anything. But this next track is from Taylor Swift.
Yeah, so this is no secret within my friend group, but I'm obsessed with Taylor Swift. She is one of my favorite people in the world. And me and my best friend Neve listen to her constantly. And when all the album dropped and stuff, one of my best friends, Alva, from school, like, we would listen to her first album, like, or her second album in maths class, like earphones in and the iPod hidden under the desk. I picked it purposely because I think she's a pop musician. Like, I've got no qualms about that. I don't really believe in guilty pleasures, but she writes pop music. She's not trying to write the most incredible piece of art in the world, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But she's incredibly successful. She's won an insane amount of awards. She's written so much material herself. She sings, she produces, she writes guitar, and I think a lot of the time, it's completely touching on stereotypes. She was pigeonholed as this, like, oh, she just writes about her exes, and she was villainized and demonized for doing what literally every other male pop singer is like a multi-millionaire for. Ed Sheeran has never written a song in his life that's not about a girl, but is lauded as this incredible musician, whereas Taylor Swift was demonized for it. And a woman in her 20s who had 3 or 4 boyfriends, is that not the norm, to like have boyfriends when you're in your early 20s and dating, let alone when you're a millionaire? So I think it was kind of funny that what it took for her to be respected or credible was Bon Iver and Aaron Dresner from The National to work with her, and then people are like, oh, actually, maybe there is something here. Maybe she is worth the Grammy nominations and the attention. And as a avid Taylor Swift fan, it's kind of nice to see this redemption arc for her now.
Absolutely. And she's definitely been someone who's been honest in everything she's done from the beginning, though, as well, hasn't she? So, you know, whether people agree or like it or like that style or think it's not cool to listen to somebody, but I don't think you can argue. I mean, I did sit down with my 15-year-old daughter to watch the film about her, and I thought, all right, I've got a different insight now into someone that I might have pigeonholed as well.
Yeah.
Right, the track you've chosen is Cardigan. Could you have chosen a number of tracks from this?
Yeah, this is probably the hardest decision on the list, but I picked Cardigan because I do think this is her new work is definitely some of her best. It's definitely her more mature. And I've always loved folk music. I'm a big fan of Joni Mitchell, and I think she's put a lot of influence from the classics there. So my head has gone completely blank now, thinking of anyone. But I think folklore has such clear influences to that folk genre, obviously, which I adore. And one of her songs, Safe and Sound, that she did for like the Hunger Games movies, was one of my favorites ever. So it's a real nice nod to that. But I just think it's an incredible song, an incredible album. So yeah, I went with this.
Vintage tea, brand new phone, high heels on, cobblestones. When you are young, they assume you know nothing. Sequin smile, black lipstick, sensual politics. When you are young, they assume you know nothing. They said I was your favorite.
Hello, this is John Robb. You're listening to Dermot on Indie Rocks.
Right, you're listening to Dermot here chatting to Carla from Sprints, and that was her seventh choice this evening. That's Cardigan from Taylor Swift, taken from her eighth studio album. It's the second track from the album Folklore, and the time has flown because we're on the last track, and it has to be one of yours. So some people choose none of their own songs, right? Firstly, others choose all of their own songs, and again, it's up to them. Some people have got huge back catalogs, so why wouldn't you pick your stuff? You're proud of it. But this track, Drones, there's been a number of singles from, I don't know if we call them singles still, but singles from the EP released. The EP was released on Friday as well, and Drones got a lot of radio play, like lots of the other stuff as well. Can you tell us anything about this track, putting it together even and so on?
Yeah, so I think I picked this song because this is probably this is one of the first songs that Sam really got involved in the writing with, and it was definitely like a very collaborative piece from the start. And I think it kind of marked a turning point for us where I used to write very much a lot of stuff on my own. We're becoming way more collaborative, or we're becoming much better at just being together in a room and being able to write almost instantly. Um, so this song was kind of the beginning of that, and was actually written while we were in the pub watching a Man United match. I was out with my girlfriend having Sunday lunch and a Guinness, and Sam sent me a voice note of a track that he did a demo of in GarageBand, and he asked me to write lyrics for it, and I pretty much wrote them on the spot in the pub, sent them back over a voice note on WhatsApp, and that was it. But it was one of those things that marked the beginning of like a real collaborative relationship.
Yeah. Do you write in the same way all the time? Is it usually something quick, or do you work on stuff over and over again?
I think it's usually quite quick. What happens is, it kind of sounds like a cop out, but like I have always found that I'm that kind of person where like inspiration will like strike like at like a random time, where I could be listening to something or something could happen and I'd have an idea and I'd pick up the guitar. And I tried to throw something down fairly quickly in terms of like a basic riff and rhythm and structure. And the lyrics, I used to kind of fawn over lyrics a lot, and I think lyrics, I'm a person who goes to lyrics first rather than music and stuff I listen to, but I've allowed myself to kind of be more spontaneous with them, I guess is the word. I've watched loads of stuff about Joe Talbot in Idols, who doesn't write a single lyric until he goes into the studio and just writes them on the spot. And I was like, God, I could never do that. That's so daunting. But I've found now that like when we go to rehearsal, I'll have an idea of a song and I'll already know like kind of what it feels like. So I kind of make up the words on the spot a little bit and go back and refine them. But yeah, I think it's amazing seeing now how far we've come, that like we'll go into rehearsal, rehearse once a week or whatever for a couple hours, and someone can pick up an instrument and start playing something, and within 5 minutes we're all playing over it and we'll have some kind of song. Like, no matter, it might not be good, but it's a song
And
still.
you've kind of hitting a vein then, haven't you, of where it's all blending together and you're working well, and something, like you said, it might be rubbish for a bit, but something good will be in there as well. That's interesting. Does the live experience help refine some of your songwriting as well?
Absolutely. I think like playing live more than anything kind of gives you that literal like barometer test, or like a gauge of what songs rip, because I think it's so funny now that we've written pretty much like the first album, and we have about like 17 songs just like in the bank waiting to be recorded, that we could send like playlists of the demos to our friends and ask them what their favorites are, and their favorites wouldn't be anywhere near close to what ours were. So it's like sometimes obviously there's crossover. There's definitely things that like you know immediately, like, okay, that's a single and this is more of an album track or whatever. But not having that live gauge, and I think particularly people being able to see the song live also changes the experience of it. So it has been weird, and it's been strange to we're just writing constantly, and we've never stopped writing. We pretty much write all the time whenever we rehearse. That now we just have these buckets of material, but we can't really do anything with them.
No, you got to get out live and do that first. Probably around this time last year, you were talking about the album coming out this year at some point, maybe. Is that still a plan for later this year, or do you think you just need to get the live stuff done and then early 2022?
I think it's looking more and more like early 2022. We were granted the Music Stimulus Package grant here in Ireland to record an album, and we were given that in November last year, and the studios haven't opened since. So, as you can imagine, the deadlines for that I think were originally everything had to be completed by end of March, and they've been now delayed till May. But even at that point, I just think with the singles that we have planned before, it's probably not realistic for us to have the album out this year, even if it is recorded. So it's trying to, at the one time, we're very eager to get everything out, but at the same time, we need to be strategic about it and plan everything properly. So there's a couple singles ahead of the album that we need to release because they're kind of a stepping stone in terms of our sonic or our song development or our like development of our sound. So I feel like if we put an album out or put the album out as it stands right now, it'd be too big of a jump. So we're really trying to plan and like hold some singles back for the album and put some on EP number 2. But I'd say by the end of this year we'll definitely have a second EP, if not.
So before we hear the last track, which is from Sprints, we've got the EP just been released on Friday. We've got this live event thing on Wednesday the 31st and another EP coming out maybe later this year and then album next year. And of course, all those gigs in October, UK and Ireland tour. Carla, it's been absolutely brilliant to speak to you this evening. Thanks for sharing some of the tracks that have influenced you along the way. And we're looking forward to more great things from Sprints.
Thanks so much for having us. Hope to see you a show soon.
Hey, this is Carla from Sprints, and you're listening to Dermot on Indie Rocks.
Discover something new with Indie Rocks Radio, Manchester's rising station.
They say I live in the past. I can make the future. Like Lundy, like Kathmandu.